So when is the right time to work on your lawnmower when it's not starting or when it's not running or starting well? Now to some that might sound like a trick question because to them no matter how difficult it is to start and run, just so long as it runs, there really isn't a problem. Well, I'm here to tell you that is a problem and making the time to fix it is always worth it. Otherwise, if you wait too long, it might be too late to fix it. In today's video, we're going to be looking at this Craftsman lawnmower, and the problem is that I was told that it needs a tune-up and that's it. No other information was given to me, so I guess we'll have to let the mower tell us what's wrong with it then. Now, I'm going to try and repair this lawnmower, but yours might be different, so this might not work on yours. So if things are not working out for you like in the video, please ask about it and I'll be glad to answer your questions. So this mower belongs to a neighbor of a good friend of mine who I've known for decades. And the only thing I was told was that it needed a good tune-up, which leads me to think that it does start and run, but it probably runs a bit rough. Now the first thing that I want to do is to take a good look around the mower and see if there's anything terribly wrong with it, but nothing really sticks out just yet. I also need to take notice of all the stickers I can, just in case I need the information that's printed on them. And the only relevant bit of information so far is the date of manufacture, which was on the 27th of April in 2018. That means there's a very good chance that this mower has not been serviced in several years. However, after getting the dipstick out of the engine, what we see is good news. The oil level is in a good spot, and on top of that, the condition isn't terrible. Now, it's not great and it will need to be changed, however, that tells me someone's taking care of this mower at some point. Now that idea was proven once more once we take a look at the air filter. I know it's a bit dirty, but if it had never been changed in its life, it'd look a whole lot worse than this. So it's been running for about 5 minutes and should be close to normal operating temperature. Next, we'll see if it'll start when hot. So just like when it was cold, this took multiple pulls to get it to start, which is not how it's supposed to be. So what that's telling us is that the valve lash is more than likely out of tolerance and we need to check it and make adjustments if needed. So here's the part that kind of surprised me. After talking to my friend, come to find out they used to have this mower maintained by a small engine shop. So what amazes me is that they let the mower leave their shop in this sort of condition. Now, what I'm talking about is not cleaning the underside of the mowing deck and also having one of the handlebars loose, making it really tough to use. All they had to do was to use a pressure washer for about 5 minutes to clean out the majority of the grass buildup on the underside of the mowing deck. And the handlebar is just missing about $1 worth of nuts and bolts, which may seem unneeded, but if you're trying to use this mower, you'll realize just how important it is. Now I will say that someone tried to very quickly scrape off the larger chunks of grass with a screwdriver or something, but they didn't try very hard and left it like this. So what's the problem leaving it like this? The answer is rust. If you have a tendency to mow your lawn in the mornings or a day after it rains, then rust could form under the mowing deck. And if you don't clean it once in a while, the rust will hide under all this buildup and eventually eat through the mowing deck. Now, typically, I don't use a pressure washer unless I'm in a big hurry or when it's really bad, and that's because it's typically never this bad. This one, though, I'm going to need to use it. So that job took about 5 minutes to do, which is quite long when talking about such a small area, but that's just how bad it was. Now, you don't have to get it this clean, but you have to admit, it looks a whole lot better. Now, it's up to you if you want to apply some sort of release agent on the metal to help keep the buildup down. Now, as for me, I don't do it, and the reason why is because putting a coating under the mowing deck will give me the impression that I don't need to check it very often. And that would cause me to not check it all year long until I start to realize that the mower is not cutting the grass very well. So I'd rather try and avoid the situations that cause the buildup in the first place than think, oh, it's okay, I've got it coated so I don't mind that it's rained the day before. Now, there's nothing wrong with mowing the grass when it's a little damp, but just be aware that the grass will likely clump up and possibly collect under the mowing deck. And if it gets bad enough, could affect how the mower cuts the grass. Well, don't worry, you're going to notice a severe drop in performance if that should happen. You're also going to notice that the engine might want to bog down and possibly even stop frequently. On top of all that, you're also going to notice that the engine's going to be using a lot of fuel. Now, you don't need to do this type of deck cleaning very often, and to be honest, it's best to do it at least once a year or when you notice the problems that I just mentioned. It's also recommended that you take off the recoil once in a while and inspect the cooling fins for debris as well. If the fins are covered in dirt, oil, or grass clippings, it could cause the engine to overheat and cause it to fail a whole lot sooner than later. Now, there was also a massive amount of dirt covering the carb, which won't hurt it, but if enough gets on it, could interfere with the throttle flap. Now, the next item I want to address is the foam air filter. I really do prefer these over the paper ones only because you can clean them and reuse them after you oil them. Now, these can last a couple of years if taken care of, whereas the paper ones will fall apart if they get wet for too long. For this cleaning, I'm going to use the same degreaser that I've been using for the mower this entire time. Just be careful on how you use the cleaner and remember to follow the directions on the bottle, otherwise you could get hurt. Before we go any further, I'm going to reinstall the blade after sharpening it. I will say one thing, be extremely careful when tightening the bolt, otherwise you'll wish that blade wasn't that sharp. I'm also going to take this opportunity to take off the air filter base to give it a good cleaning as well. Now just be aware that the emissions hose was connected to the port on the back of the air filter base and will need to be reconnected again. And if you forget to reconnect this hose, the air filter will get dirtier a lot faster than it should. I'm also going to spray a light lube on the wheels to make sure the wheels don't get worn out and get all wobbly in the future. Now, installing the emissions hose can be a bit tricky for some, and to make it easier, you can take the recoil off, which is what I'm going to do, but you can do it without taking it off. But if you have some long needle nose pliers, that might make it a little bit easier to install as well. Now, unfortunately, since I got the air filter wet, I wasn't sure if the last shop oiled the filter before installing it. Just remember that foam filters won't capture fine particles by itself. That's the reason why they need to be oiled. Now, I have seen the literature that says to use engine oil on the filter, and if you wish to do so, you certainly can. Just realize that if you use engine oil, you need to clean the filter quite often, as it'll do a fantastic job of collecting dirt. But if you don't check it often enough to clean it and reapply the oil, it could become an issue. That's the reason why I like to use a light oil, because it captures most of the dirt and I don't have to clean it so often, so it's up to you how often you want to clean the filter. So I'm pretty sure that the last shop to work on it installed this terrible aftermarket spark plug, which also had a massive gap on the ground. I'll just close up the gap and then ask the owner if they want a new plug, but most times if it's not a problem, they'll just say no. So here's the main problem with this engine that apparently no one seemed to want to check despite the obvious problems starting it. First, we're going to turn the engine until one rocker arm is loose while the other is tight. Next, we're going to see just how far out of spec the clearance is between the rocker arm and the top of the valve. We'll start with the 5000 feeler gauge, and it turns out the clearance is a lot bigger than this, which is not good. That means I'll keep increasing the thickness until I find the one that just barely fits, which turns out to be the 15,000, which is about a mile away from what it's supposed to be. Next, we'll rotate the engine until this arm is tight and the other one is loose, and then check it as well. After doing the same process, we find out that the upper arm's clearance is even more than the other one, which confirms why this engine is really tough to start when it's hot or cold. So to make our adjustments, I'm going to turn the nuts counterclockwise to loosen them and then turn out these smaller set screws to give me room to turn the nut in. Next, I'll slide my 5000 feeler into the clearance and then slowly turn the nut until the feeler almost gets stuck in the clearance. Then I'll turn the set screws tight in the nut and then check to make sure that the clearance is still correct. And if it's not, you'll have to make a very slight adjustment to the nut, but this one's good, so we'll rotate the engine again and do the very same process for the other arm. Now, I know this process might look complicated, but after you give it a try, it won't seem as difficult as it first appears. Now, the best part is that with the valve lash back to where it's supposed to be, it should make starting this engine a whole lot easier. Of course, we can't forget to put some fresh oil into the engine before we start it. Now, I will let you know that trying to fill this engine with this blue bottle and no fill tube makes it really tough to do. That's the reason why in some of my videos I've started using a bottle with a long neck, just to make it easier to pour in. Just make sure there's plenty of oil in the engine, otherwise it won't get enough lubrication and cause the engine to wear out faster than it should. So the customer finally got back to me, and of course they did not want to replace the spark plug unless it was damaged or if I was willing to give it to them for free. Now, I consider myself a very generous person, however, I don't get these spark plugs for free, which means they're not going to get one for free either. Now, the nut and bolt that I used in the handlebar was free because they were parts that I already had lying around and I'd rather use them than just keeping them. That means I don't have a problem giving those to them for free. So after lubing up the cable, I think it's finally time to see just how well the engine starts after our adjustments. So this time it took only one pull to start it, which means the adjustments helped out a lot. Next we'll see if it starts up when it's hot. So I guess that pretty much confirms it. Putting the valve lash back to spec makes it a whole lot easier to start now, at least in comparison to how many pulls it needed before the adjustments. Look, I don't want to talk too badly about the shop that worked on this mower before, but I do believe that checking the valve lash is needed when the engine is really tough to start. Now, you don't have to check it every year, but every 3 to 4 years seems to be a good time to do it. That means if you have an engine like this one and it's 7 years old or older and tough to start when hot or cold, you might need to inspect the valve lash to see if it might need to be adjusted. Now, as for this one, I'm sure they'll be very happy to get a mower back that's got fresh oil in it, a sharpened blade, and now is much easier to start, but then again, I could be wrong. So my question is your mower a bit tough to start, and if so, do you think your engine might need to have the valves adjusted? Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.